Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Rob Morrow here from the Rockford Report. This is the I Wish I Would Have Started Ronald Jones edition. Today, we have Jeffrey Tager. He's coming on to talk about week 6, the week that was, as well as talk about his favorite draft locations. He's actually going to rank them from his least favorite to his most favorite. Hopefully, later on this week, maybe we'll have another Ian Schaefer appearance, the pickup artist. We've got AJ coming up soon talking about the class of 2021 as we gear up for next year. Some of the best college players we could be looking at for next year's draft. And probably another Casey appearance talking about a week 7 preview. So enjoy the pod. Talk to you soon. All right. Hey, good afternoon, Jeff Tager. How are you?
I am doing good, recovering from the long weekend of football, getting ready for game 1 of the World Series.
Go Jeff, Dodgers. Do you watch any college football too?
I don't really watch a lot of college football. I work Saturdays. I mean, I follow the Pac-12 and that stuff, but with, like Pac-12 not playing, I'll see scores and that stuff, but I don't get off of work until like 7 on Saturdays. So unless it's one of those like primetime late night games, it's hard for me to really kind of like follow it. So growing up, I mean, I was the biggest college football fan. And then it completely swung when I went to SKFL, started working at Comcast, had Sundays off. So I just sort of switched my allegiance. But no, I haven't been paying too much attention to it.
I got my new buddy here behind me.
Yeah, I know. I know who he is. Yeah.
So the Sarevich Award today for Musa, we're going to recap week 6 here in a second, but that's a pretty surprising move. We knew it was going to happen at some point because you don't draft Tua to not play him for 3 years like they did with Aaron Rodgers. But they're 3-3. They've won 2 in a row, 2 blowout wins. Fitzy's playing great, and it's bye week, so they're making the move. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I was sort of blown away. I mean, I think you had texted that this had to be planned, in advance, because what's so crazy is Fitzpatrick's so beloved in those locker rooms that he's in. I mean, whether you think he's the answer or not, I mean, the team and players love him. It was, it was controversial last year when they went to Jameis. Or maybe it might have been 2 years ago when Tampa Bay did that, when Jameis had the suspension, and it was like he was playing well, but he's so beloved. It had to be something that was discussed because, yeah, I mean, they're in the playoff hunt. They're winning games. Good. He was probably as responsible for the culture turnaround than Flores was. So, I mean, the fact that they're doing this now just shows this was probably decided week 1 preseason. Hey, we're gonna. Whether they were going to be 0-6 or 6-0, they were going to make this move no matter what. So good for Tua. I mean, good for Fitz that, he's been able to kind of have a second career of just being sort of a beloved, backup, and see how it works out.
Yeah, it's also good for Rockford. America's team now has 3 quarterbacks. So we're fired. Excuse me, I was joking to myself. We're fired up about that. And so let's jump into actually one more question. Devontae Parker, if you're Casey Tager right now, are you happy with this change, or are you just making you nervous with Devontae?
I think it makes you nervous. I mean, I think the only person that this really elevates right now is Tua. I mean, I think it's a downgrade to all the skill positions. I mean, the Fitzmagic ride is just, buckle up. He's either going to throw a 70 or he's going to throw a 10. I mean, I think going to Tua, the offense is going to be conservative. They're going to just try and, ease him in, use some of his skill sets. I don't see this being an upgrade to the Dolphins' skill positions. I think it's an upgrade to the Dolphins in general, as far as winning games and that stuff. But no, I mean, I don't think Tua comes out of the gate, starts throwing for 300 yards. So I think you're going to see kind of like a miniature, Kyler Murray was last year, where he's probably going to be running around. He's going to have some big games, but he's going to have some inconsistent games. And you're okay with that as a wide receiver, but you don't really want that out of a quarterback. So no, I think the skill positions, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Gaskin, I think Gesicki, I think all those guys, maybe neutral, but yeah, I don't see them really feeling those owners feeling like, hey, this is a massive upgrade.
Yeah, well, moving on to week 6, we kind of had a wild run here. 2 Monday night games, some very close games, a lot of really close games. One was I was involved in, Los was involved in one, and then of course Cappers and Pay Your Respects, which we're starting here. Really big win for Musa. He's at 5-1 now, really cemented as a likely playoff team. This win helps me, of course, because it keeps me within striking distance at Cappers, who's only at 3-3 right now. Cappers had that big Wentz game. Respects was pretty solid all across the board. Didn't have anybody really break out. It's tough to get a win when nobody gets 30 for you.
It's Musa's kind of MO has just been depth and, having a bunch of guys that score 20, 25. But yeah, brutal loss for Randy. I mean, you totally feel safe. Yeah, I'm glad it kind of worked out where the defensive thing didn't swing the game. He would have lost even if he didn't play a defense. But yeah, you never in a million years think Tyreek Hill is going to get an 8. And it's just the torture nature of kind of how we watch all these games. I mean, it's just one of those things that's completely different, right? If
lost audio, Jeffrey. Oh, you're back. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those. I was just saying it's one of those wild things about how you watch the games and how this game got flexed to a Monday. If Tyreek Hill throws up an 8 on a random Sunday afternoon, it doesn't sting as much. But when you need points, you need to hold off Amari in the Monday night game, to see it sort of happen in real time. I mean, it's just what's made fantasy football so so emotional and so amazing now is because you're seeing all the plays. So these Monday night games, and I mean, kudos to the NFL. Like, I don't know why we're not playing double Monday night headers from here on out. I just think that's going to be a change, that get rid of the Thursday game or get rid of 9, 10 a.m. Sunday games and just play these games on Monday. Like, it's just incredible. And it's, unfortunately for Randy, it just, a win sort of slipped out of his hands, but he still feels really good about his team. Moose is still kind of limping and getting banged up. And then, yeah, he's going to have to manage without Fitzpatrick now. So,
well, another action, we had the Rat Fuck Bastards, the RFBs, with a big 10-point win over Fiskare. Again, this is another one I'm a huge fan of. It allows Fiskare, who's a pretty good team down there at 2-4, keeps the Panella very, very tight together. Really big win by Wade here. He also didn't have really anybody stand out. The Dolphins defense was a nice start. Kenyon Drake got a kind of a gift 50 there and almost got Fiskare back in it last night. What did you see in this matchup?
It was going to be a close game for sure. I mean, I kind of thought Wade was going to win early on when you just sort of look at the matchups, just because you kind of saw a little bit of a changing of the guard with, the Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmondson. I mean, big now that Drake feels like he kind of got a stranglehold back on that job again. But the Aaron Rodgers thing, I mean, nobody could have saw that coming. I mean, he comes out the gate, scores 10 points in the first 5 minutes, looks like he's going to hang up 30 against Tampa Bay, and then, does the little ravishing Rick Rude kind of thrust pump and then gets completely shut down and taken out of the game. And that's going to be how Los's team goes. Now, I'm terrified because next week he gets Green Bay playing against the Texans defense, who I think might be the worst defense in the league. So I'm totally preparing for Aaron Rodgers to throw up a 70 next week. And unfortunately, it's going to be at my hands. But yeah, it's just great for the SKFL. I mean, right now we're sitting at the 2 top teams record-wise at 5-1. Both have massive question marks with injuries. So some of these teams, you want these wins, but even Los at 2-4 feels great. And then, Wade at 3. It's just completely jumbled up now where, the power rankings are anybody's fair game now. I mean, you could be sitting at 2-4 and feel like you're a win away from, being one of the better teams. So tough loss for Los, but I think he's got to feel good going forward into next week. I got his matchup against me. I got a bunch of buys, and he's got some guys that are ready to pop. And tough that Hopkins, got tackled at like the 2 or 3 on a play that could have swung the game. And who knows if that happens, then if the Drake touchdown happens. But he's got to be feeling good. But it's always tough to lose those games and to see it lost by just a matter of minutes there. And God, how bad was Andy Dalton? I mean, it's unreal that he throws up a 23 and Aaron Rodgers only gets a 9, because when you watch both those games, it's like Andy Dalton had no business being on the field.
Yeah, 23, it felt like a minus 23.
Exactly.
right, moving on. AJ's team, makes me happy. I'm sorry. Makes happy over the dark side. Happy put up a monster 291. He took some shots from KC9 last week's. I think the bracketology, Mr. Playoffs, kind of saying he was a bit of a fake 3-2, but nothing fake about 291.
Nothing at all. And this is kind of Happy's MO. I mean, we talked about Moose's MO. This is Happy's MO. Weather starts turning, gets into the middle of the season, he just relies on those running backs. And, you know, Henry's now in the MVP conversation. And Tannehill, anybody could have drafted, right? Like, he was amazing at the end of last year. He didn't get kept. And he was one of those quarterbacks that just sort of fell. Nobody kind of believed it. And it's like, okay, we're 20 games into the Tennessee Tannehill now. We know who he is. Like, yeah, he might not be a top, you know, he's not in that Mahomes category, but he's consistently throwing up 40s. You got to believe it now. And, you know, it's going to carry Happy. He's starting to get some receivers. He's got, you know, ammunition now, especially with some of the receivers on his IR too. Like, he's got Shepard and he's got Lazard on his IR. Debo looks good. Mike Williams has looked good. So, you know, he's always one to kind of move, trade. And he's rolling now. I mean, 4-2, this is Carl doing Carl things, right? I think, you know, you get out of the division and people are ready to kind of put him under the grave. And, you know, he's rolling. He's as good of he feels as good as anybody. He's getting his quarterbacks back. He's got flexibility, and he's winning games without Elliott going nuts. And now Henry's kind of got his little run. Henry seems to have one of these 4 to 6 week runs where he throws up 60s consistently, and then he might go away. But yeah, it's buckle up time for Happy, because he's coming for the rest of the league.
I'm concerned about the Flacco lock, what he's going to do there. That's the only. I look at this team like, man, great at tight end. Those receivers, that'll work. Running backs, top notch. Tannehill's good, but that second quarterback, I mean,
he's gonna have to make some move. I mean, the nice thing for him is it looks like he's got Dobbins now kind of coming. So whether he can move on from him, I mean, yeah, Flacco's only got another week or two, but Drew Lock's going to come back and he's got weapons. I mean, you don't feel great, but if Tannehill's going to be throwing up 40, when you punt quarterback like that in our league, you're really only looking for like 60. You're not looking at it 2 guys trying to get 40. You're looking at 2 guys trying to get 60. And if Tannehill can get 35, you really only need Drew Lock to get 25. And that's not the strength of his team. So I think as long as Drew Lock's healthy, he's going to be playing and he's going to be putting up 25s. And then, you know, some random week he can get 35. So I don't think he's that bad. You know, maybe, and that's something he can upgrade. He can look at packaging one of those receivers with Lock and maybe get a little bit more stable of a quarterback. But yeah, I mean, he's not looking at that as a strength. So I think he'll be okay. And then, yeah, it's unfortunate for Kenny. I mean, you throw up 230s, you feel like you should win in the SKFL. I mean, that's kind of like the goal this year, because scoring's somewhat down. So he's had some tough losses where a couple starts the other way, got guys on his bench that if he activates, you know, AJ Green, he throws up a 260 this week and probably beats a majority of the league. So tough for him. Good to see kind of Gronk. You know, he's gotten so much shit from taking Gronk, but Gronk's going to finish the season probably as a top 5 tight end, which isn't as glaring when you think about it because of how bad that position's been. Yeah, I mean, 1-5, it's an uphill climb, but kudos to him for still sort of competing and trying to put out a roster. But brutal.
Kenny, I'm worried about Kenny next week. I mean, it's not, I mean, I'm 2-4, so I should be worried about everybody, but I don't think he's a pushover the rest here. I think he's going to get some wins. He's not going to end up 1-13. He's going to get 3-4 wins.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree for sure.
So it's a celebration. Took down WrestleMania. Big time win here. Anytime you get a 205 and win by 106, you know, it's a good week for you. In fact, he won by more than Blake actually got, which I don't know how many times that has happened in SKFL history. Really, really easy win for Casey. So not much to talk about here. What we will say is Will Fuller, big numbers there. Kyler Murray, really big numbers there. But I'm just going to kind of breeze through this one, if you don't mind, Jeff, and go to.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the story for him is just like, I mean, we've seen enough of Baker to know that the Baker thing's not going to happen. And it's a shame because of his rookie season and all that. But IAC's got some question marks. I mean, he's getting hot now, but I mean, it's amazing that just shows how good Aaron Jones, Hilaire, and Kyler have been, that he's been able to survive Baker, Zach Ertz, and T.Y. Hilton. Like, I think that's the last you're going to see of T.Y. Hilton in the starting lineup in the SKFL, and he's been kind of a prime SKFL guy.
Yeah, he's just you'd always count on because I've had Ty multiple times. Is that deep ball? He's going to get a whammy for you probably every other game. It felt like, and
and it's weird now because it's early on it was like, oh, Phillip Rivers just can't throw the deep ball, but Phillip Rivers is throwing the deep ball to everybody else. Like Marcus Johnson had no problem catching the deep ball, so I think it's just T.Y. Hilton's washed. I think it's just he's done. I mean, it's like what you were seeing from Breeze where he can't throw I just don't think T.Y. Hilton can get separation. He's dropping balls. It's a weird thing for sure. But yeah, I mean, and we can move on from that game.
To get it off my screen. Well, AJ had an AJ game, and this is what AJ teams do. You never know what you're going to get. This easily could have been a 170, but he got the big game from Jefferson. He got a huge game from Watson. Cousins showed up. They got down big early. He was chucking it the whole game. A good defensive start against Dalton. And your team, it was fine. It was a nice, solid performance. Matt Ryan went off for you, but Juju kind of let you down. Madison, they got down, so they weren't going to run it very much. Does this would this surprise you? Did this outcome surprise you at all?
A little bit. I mean, if you would have told me this would have been the score on a Friday, Saturday, I mean, again, with watching these games on Red Zone, you sort of saw it happening. I mean, that Falcons Minnesota game, like there's 5 guys in our matchup going in that game. So of course I'm tracking that like crazy, and you just knew it was coming. It's like Cousins gets picked twice in the first half. You're thinking, oh, I mean, Falcons are moving the ball left and right. And you're like, this isn't going to be good because it's going to be an entire second half of the Falcons running it, an entire second half of the Vikings throwing it, which was going to kill Madison. And you just knew Cousins and Jefferson were going to go off. And at the same time, my defense goes down 21-0. So now I'm just like, okay, I got to survive a -10. And you kind of knew it was over. And that's just the brutal part about fantasy. It's like, okay, I mean, the Vikings just absolutely get destroyed by one of the worst teams in the league, but it completely flips fantasy. Like it doesn't help me fantasy wise that the Vikings are up, 35-7 kind of thing. And it just totally played to AJ's, benefit. And kudos to AJ. He made some good plays. I mean, getting DeAndre Swift in the lineup because Kelly was on bye helped. He dropped the tight end to pick up Hooper, who was good. So, I mean, yeah, these are kind of why it's scary to play AJ, young receivers that can kind of go off. And I mean, you're never disappointed when you lose to the week high. That's always kind of like, okay, no matter what. I kind of saw my floor game and still kind of threw up a 220. So I feel really good. I'm down 2 of my best guys. I'm really banged up right now. I knew weeks 5 through 9, I was in trouble with some of my bye weeks and the injuries. And so to be able to still throw up a 215, 217 when I'm down my 2 best backs, a tight end, and a couple receivers, I feel okay. I am definitely worried about Juju. And then if I can get Lamar playing well, I mean, Lamar, it's crazy. I mean, I'm sort of notorious the Lamar hater, right? But the Ravens skill players are unstartable right now. I mean, there's no running back that you can start. Andrews has been up and down. Marquise Brown gets a couple deep balls a game, but Lamar's off on him. So I feel pretty good still. But tough game ahead with Los. And then, yeah, I kind of got beat pretty soundly by AJ.
Is this why some of your latent Lamar hostility stems from you're owning some of these Ravens skill players and not putting up numbers for you?
A little bit, probably. I mean, now it's just kind of like swerving into the accident. I mean, my stance is on record now, so I'm going to be known as the guy that wasn't sold on Lamar. And I think Lamar has now hit a ceiling. I mean, he is definitely plateaued. He is not, and that might be because his receivers aren't very good. I mean, he's still rolling out Boykin and Duvernay and Willie Snead, so it might not be all on him. But to not get that running game going at all is just really kind of weird. But they're winning games, so we'll see. I'm curious to see what happens with some of their tough games coming up when they start playing Pittsburgh and some of those things. But no, I mean, Marquise Brown's been fine. It's just, it would be the difference between Marquise Brown being a top 25 receiver and being a top 5 receiver if Lamar was playing well.
Lastly, a tough loss for me against the RDR, the Ron Dick Revival, 212-202. Did not get a lot of help from Cooper Kupp. Did not get a lot of help from Jerry Jeudy. Other than that, had a pretty, had some solid performances. I had Ronald Jones in my starting lineup. I switched him out for David Montgomery last second just because I thought, in most of the running back rankings, Montgomery was a little bit ahead of Jones. I thought the Green Bay defense might be a little bit more stingy. They weren't. So that's, and I don't really regret it, but that would have been nice to get that in there. But I tell you what, though, I do like my team. This is the best I've ever felt about a 2-4 team because we've got Michael Thomas coming back. We've been through a lot of buys already, and I've got depth at running back. So I'm feeling, and then Tua is going to be a wild card for me. He's probably not going to be startable right away, but I think he can get some rushing yards. I think he can chuck it around a little bit. So, and then Ian, Julio 47. I've kind of been talking Julio shit, so that's in my face. He only got a 212. I thought if you'd have told me Ian's getting a 212, I think I'm going to win this week.
Yeah, another I mean, the third, SKFL game this week of under 10 points for the, margin. And it's just, yeah, I agree. You got David Montgomery on your roster. You're playing him against Carolina. And if you're not, then he doesn't belong on your roster. So, and all week, Fournette was supposed to play. And then that's a late scratch. So in your head, you're like, okay, there's enough there to sort of sway you off of Ronald Jones. And, you're in that same position now where, you don't think as a team of 2-4, you have depth, but you have depth. So you have the ability, 3 starting quarterbacks, 5, 6 starting wide receivers. So now you can kind of think, well, some of those teams at 4-2, it's hard to make a trade because you're winning. Whereas when you're 2-4 and you have depth and upside, you can make a trade because you can sort of like take that risk a little bit easier. So I actually like your position right now. You have 4 running backs that you feel like you can start. Whereas some of these 5-1 teams, like, I'm starting Jamal Williams this week. Like Moosa's, he's down Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb. So like you feel really strong. Tough to lose to Ian when, you only get a 38 from Mahomes. You always count like 100 from those quarterbacks. So that game was definitely ripe for the taking. I think you'd mentioned it on the WhatsApp is what swung it was the Ravens defense. The Ravens defense was sitting on a 45, 46 in the third quarter. And then just Wentz got some garbage time yards and garbage time TDs and completely flipped that matchup. That was the difference. If the Ravens D just gives up a 25, you tie. And, we're going to stress on the Ronald Jones start, but it was just kind of some of those things. And yeah, kudos to Ian, right? He was to be able to go 3-0 without McCaffrey when Julio was banged up. It's just, he's winning games that he shouldn't have been. Ian really is a couple of plays away from being 2-4, and we feel like there'd be a changing of the guard, but he survived that whole Julio McCaffrey thing early. And then even Deontay's been in and out of the lineup too. So big win for Ian. I was definitely rooting for you in that one. And it was just, kind of tough. You think early on, Sunday, you think, well, he's got Mahomes and Hardman going Monday night. So, I'm going to need something big from Kupp. But God, if Kupp could have just got a 15, you win that game. You wouldn't have thought it would have been another amazing Monday night finish because you're rooting against Mahomes and Hardman, but it almost worked for you.
So close and yet so far. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. And really what we wanted to talk about today, I'll tease this before it, so it'll make more sense, is we wanted to talk about drafts. We've had, 15, 16 SKFL drafts in the history. And Jeffrey and I, for the last couple of weeks, have kind of been talking about ranking those drafts from, not that any of them have really been bad, because I don't think there really has been a bad draft, with the exception of maybe if you've been remote or, the first Yahoo one, which I actually remember a little bit. So Jeffrey, let's count them down, 16 down to 1 or 15 down to 1, what you feel like the best drafts are or the worst drafts are, and some maybe anecdotes about those.
Sure. So I'll just give a rundown. Again, Ian always sort of talks about the SKFL being a community, right? So, and the live draft is a big part of that. That's the one time you get together and get everybody in the room, and everybody has a different take of what makes a good draft. So, these are my ranks. I was talking, it's only the Tager brothers have actually been to every live draft. There's been some people who've drafted remotely, people that had somebody else fill in. So, there's different things that make a draft. I think we've learned now that you really just want everybody in the same room. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. But like I said, I'll try and share, a little fun tidbit. these are my rankings. I'll be a little harsh, and I probably overvalue some other things because of different things that were going on in our life. But yeah, we'll start worst to first. So there's been 17 drafts, so we'll go 17th. I will say the worst draft we ever had was 07. Doug hosted it from his house in White Center, and it was brutal. It was done. Now, again, this might be my own personal bias because I went in, that was the height of like the Jeffrey Julie saga. So I went I think I showed up in the draft in like the second round. So I wasn't paying attention at all to fantasy football this summer, 07. But like Doug's place was small. I think it was like, there was people drafting downstairs. There was a couple people in the kitchen. Like, I think Musa showed up for me, or maybe showed up for Yusuf to draft. Just really nothing good about that draft. I mean, a lot of Aaron, like, how about now jokes, which, at that time it had run its course for sure. So I actually think Doug's is the worst draft we ever had.
It's very unmemorable. I only have like 2 memories from that draft. And
I think the only thing I remember is I think Les had a Chad Johnson jersey and Aaron had a Jamal Charles or Larry Johnson jersey, I think was the only thing I remember about it. So 16, the 04 draft, the inaugural SKFL draft. I mean, again, that shows you how bad Doug's draft was, that it lost to a draft that was all done online on Yahoo. And I have, there's fun tidbits. Like, that's when we didn't know what we were doing. We had a kicker drafted in the 3rd round, which is still probably not as worse as Gronk in the 2nd, but Priest Holmes' first SKFL pick. But yeah, nothing memorable about the draft, but it's the inaugural one. So I have that at the 16th worst draft. The 15th worst draft to me, 09. Ian hosted this one. It was done. I don't even know where it was hosted, but it was just an abandoned like warehouse where he kind of like coded from, like in Pioneer Square. I think we drafted, there was like no desks. I think it was like lawn chairs that we were drafting from. It was nothing memorable about the draft. I think Les might have brought his dog. A couple of the wives showed up, but it was bad. We ended up going after the draft to Elysian, which was kind of nice. But yeah, it was just kind of like in and out. We drafted relatively quick. I think that was when Aaron was bringing his microphone to every draft. So again, nothing memorable, nothing horrible about it, but just doesn't really stand out.
Yeah, I agree.
Those were kind of like, those were kind of like bottom of the barrel drafts. The next one I would have 2015. I sort of hosted this. This was put together last minute. It was kind of a hybrid. We did half the draft at my condo in West Seattle, and then the other half we walked over to Westy. I had that reserved. Again, nothing special about this draft. We did learn that this is when, Brian Harris could not spend a night away from Yolanda. So this is what ended up leading to his ousting, is because he couldn't attend the draft. So like, he's trying to draft from I-90, and this is probably why I have it ranked so low. I'm on the phone with him trying to update him on picks while I'm trying to concentrate. We did a thing at Westy where we had to cover like $1,000 tab, and I think people had eaten before, so nobody was really eating or drinking. So we started throwing like these random, if you drafted this guy, you had to take a shot so that we could like fill up our tab kind of thing. But just another sort of like bad draft.
Do you remember the pitcher that threw a no-hitter that night? There was a game on the big screen. Can you remember the pitcher?
I don't remember, no.
Jake Arrieta.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Okay, so I think then I think it might be, again, I don't have the scrolling. So then the next worst draft, I think, is probably like the 13th or 12th overall. 2013, another one that Ian hosted. This was the Inn at the Market, Pike Place Market. Just beautiful room. It was probably too upscale. I mean, this was more of like a elite sort of conference room. Both Sadies, I think, missed the draft. This is the one that Yusuf had Harris show up as the $1 million man and draft for him. I think AJ drafted for Musa. Ian talks about this. There was actually a second conference room that would have reserved the whole top floor of that building that looks out all over Lake Union and could have been really memorable. But this was one that was just sort of drafting to draft. And I think we all went our separate ways afterwards. I think we ordered some Pagliacci or something, but nothing memorable about that draft at all. The next one after that, kind of again moving upwards, the worst draft at 2011. This was done at the church in West Seattle. Aaron sort of hosted this. This is one that we were supposed to draft at like 4, but this was like UW in Eastern Washington played in the opener, and we were all at Rocksport. I think I had to work, but I was getting off work, and like UW was supposed to like blow out Eastern, and Bo Levi Mitchell was the quarterback for Eastern. I think he threw for like 600 yards. The game went to like 6 p.m. I think it was a 1 o'clock game, and it went to like 6. So we were like really late to start the draft, but kudos to Vaughn. This is the first time we actually had a legit draft bitch. He showed up in a skirt, like a denim skirt. He cleaned up after everybody. Aaron got like a liquor license to be able to like allow us to drink from it. So we're starting to get in there now to like good drafts, but that was kind of like the last of the bad ones.
Yeah, that draft is memorable for me because, you know, I'm not the funniest guy in the world, humorous sometimes, but I think the best line I've ever had in my life was the Philadelphia line with Les. That one, because Les was, I don't remember what the hell was going on, but that was probably the biggest eruption of laughter I've ever gotten from anything I've ever said in my life.
I had that in my notes. Thanks for bringing that up. I did. Unless if you're watching it, we'll have to cover that another time. So the next draft I have, 2018, AJ hosted this draft at his cabana. This is kind of known to me as kind of like the Lamar overreaction by me. I think AJ catered Azteca, which I don't think it's ever a good idea to give all you can eat beans and tacos to 5 or 6 of us in the SKFL. So, and then you put us all in the same room. So pretty good draft. I think this is really when we started learning, you really just want everybody in the same room, give them their space. A lot can go by the draft just depending on who you're sitting next to. So I think I had Ian drafting remotely on my computer next to me. So I think that was probably why I was so hard on the Lamar pick, was because it was like Ian was sitting right next to me. But I think we also spent like 3 or 4 hours before the draft even started trying to debate some of those rules. So that kind of left a sour taste on the draft too. I think we were supposed to start at 1 and didn't really get going till like 3 because we were talking about changes. And I think that led to, okay, no more change talk on the draft. Let's just draft to draft kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that draft though. That was a good one.
Yeah. Now we're in that range of like memorable drafts where you remember. So the next one I got was the one you hosted last year at the Loft in SeaTac. And again, I give this one a little bit credit too, because this was the first time we actually really, or not the first time, but we did sort of a draft weekend type thing. Like the day before, we did an escape room. We all met up at Anju afterward, after the escape room, had a whole day. I think there was a moment where Ian ordered teriyaki, and he had been living remotely, or he flew in for this. And it was like, you could tell he hadn't had teriyaki in 3 or 4 years. And it was like, seeing him orgasmic as he's eating chicken katsu, and everybody still sort of talks about it. So
he came 3 times.
That was like AJ. I think AJ, Randy, Casey, Yusuf spent like 90 minutes on a trade. That kind of was like a 4-person thing, but really kind of nice. I mean, I think I shared a hotel. I mean, a couple people like Wade drove up, stayed the night at that hotel. So that was really where we started kind of learning, like, okay, give some people a chance to make this thing kind of an SKFL weekend. Next one I got 2006. Doug hosted this at the Sport. This was when he was, manager at Sport Restaurant.
What number are we at on your list right now?
So we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this would be like
number 8.
Yeah, or this would be number 9, I think.
Okay.
This was like again, you kind of just had one of like the little conference rooms at Sport. We all were in the same room. I think Vaughn drafted for Les. I think Les was in Hawaii, so this was I think it was just all done through phone calls. But this was also the draft Yusuf like proclaimed, I can't believe this guy fell so far, and drafted Jimmy Smith, who had retired like 3 months before. I think there's also, this was the draft me and you like dared one another. I had like the Cal Naughton Jr. facial hair, and you had the Ricky Bobby facial, or vice versa from Talladega Nights. There's not a lot of pictures of that, but yeah, we had some brutal facial hair going. Casey also, I don't think it was the first pick overall, but it might have been the first pick. This was also when Casey drafted Reggie Bush like #1 and walked up and said it's a PPR league, bitches. And that didn't really work out great for him, but yeah, pretty good draft. I think
I remember that Ian and Stella had the matching like baseball shirts.
That might have been that. I think that was that draft. I think you're right. Yeah, I think Les provided Doug provided like sport appetizers and all that stuff, but should have been the read the tea leaves, another one of Doug's sort of failed restaurants. I think I've known Doug for 20 years.
Shots fired.
I think he's worked at like 6 restaurants. He worked at Shiso, it's out of business. He worked at Albo Colino, it's out of business. Sport, it's out of business. He opened up Table, it's out of business. So yeah, no, just teasing Doug there for sure. But yeah, that was a good draft. The next one I got, as far, I think it's the eighth best draft overall, was actually this year, 2020. This was thrown together in the COVID era. We didn't think we were going to even have an in-person draft. Thought it was going to be maybe like 3 or 4 people meeting up in Casey's garage. We ended up getting like 9 guys on site in the garage. We had the Scott Hansen cameo, which was really cool. I know when Blake showed up, or an Uber Eats delivery guy showed up, and because of the mask situation, like I think half the people that were there thought it was Blake. So we were like inviting him in, like, oh, pick your, and then we realized, no, it was just a guy bringing food. But we had the Whitney Houston thing for Musa. So there hurts because you were drafting remotely. Wade was remote. AJ was remote. But actually, all things considered, it was actually a really good draft. 7th best draft, 2016. Casey hosted this in Leavenworth. This was kind of really one of the first sort of like weekend. This was a failed experiment. We tried to do a 2-day draft. So I think we drafted the first 8 rounds or first 6 rounds one night, and then we came back the next day.
Yep.
First night, we didn't really, utilize that place. You had to leave early, I think, the next morning. Yep. So we had to wake up early and draft. I think me and you stayed up till like 3 a.m. debating Jim Crow South with Gist and Wade's brother-in-law. And I think you stole a hat from that one.
I did, yeah.
I don't know, like a Rainier hat or something.
It was like an apple blossom run when Wenatchee hat. I still have that thing somewhere.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it was a great idea. It was cool to have a full room, but again, it was like the lasting things of that draft was, I think we were all supposed to like, help bring food and fix costs and stuff like that. We had done the night before and trying to get planned for everything. And I think Gist showed up with a bag of like M&Ms as his way of pitching in for, helping out for costs and stuff like that. Wade's brother-in-law filmed all these testimonials of us like making our first and second picks. And he was supposed to put this thing together, and they're probably just sitting in some like closet, and he like watches it over and over again, hoping that Wade brings him in the SKFL. I don't know what happened to that, but good draft. I mean, it was unfortunate, making that drive over to Eastern Washington in 2016 with all of the, that was a Trump election. So you saw all these kind of like MAGA signs, and that's kind of funny. I think I made that drive over with Kenny and Los and all that stuff. So fun draft, but again, could have been better. I think the 2-day draft didn't work. And that's kind of why I have this lower down than it should. Probably should have been.
A lot of ping pong with Wade.
A lot of ping pong. And there was some video games. The next day we ended up playing Risk. It was some solid stuff the next day for sure. So the next best draft would be number 6 on the list. I have the 2012 Organized Spaces. This is Gist, and I probably have this a little overvalued. This was Gist's place of work. This was just a kind of a cool weekend. Like, there was the draft that I think the day before, or maybe the next. I think the day before, me, Musa, Yusuf went to Bumbershoot, and like Yusuf almost got in a fight. We went to this Skrillex, like these huge people within the EDM movement. So, and then the day after the draft, me and Yusuf flew out to Louisiana to watch LSU UW. Oh, yeah. So I think I kind of just like think of this weekend being a little bit better. This was also the first year sans the Olsons and Les. So we did a whole kind of like rest in peace sort of like hit 'em up style Tupac mixtape where we were like burning their players. And so it was just kind of fun. I think somebody made some Kenny didn't have deodorant, or he realized it, so we ended up having to like leave the draft and go to a 7-Eleven so Kenny can get deodorant. So but another one where we're just all sort of in the same room. So this draft worked out. I think it was Moose's first draft in the league. But again, I probably have it a little overvalued just because of kind of some stuff going on that weekend with the concert and UW LSU. The fifth best draft, I have 2005. Your brother Casey Morrow hosted this at Chihuly. I still have no clue how he pulls this off. I have this way undervalued because this is pre-smart. If we had pictures of this, I think it would be like the best draft in the history. I still have no idea if you don't know who Dale Chihuly, I mean, he's probably one of the biggest. I mean, it's like Russell Wilson, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Dale Chihuly as far as like Seattle icons, like of all time. And we're in his workshop after hours, like right on, like, I still have no idea how this happened.
I don't remember either. But I didn't even know if my brother was allowed to do this.
I don't think so either. Like, I mean, I like, that's what I like remember about this draft. Like, I think you bought everybody like personal pizzas that were sort of waiting for us there. This was the draft. I think Wade took Joey Harrington in the third round. But like, if we had pictures or like video of this, it would be unbelievable because you're sitting in like, $100 million like workshop, and Casey Morrow like intern for him or something like that. I don't know, but I'm still not convinced we just didn't break in there. Like he had some drug deal done there. I have no idea, but I think Angel showed up for probably like 3 or 4 hours. Stella was there for a little while. So amazing location for sure. Fourth best draft, I have 2017. Wade hosted this in Lincoln City. Kind of remember this one as being sort of the marijuana draft. We did a weekend. We did the night before. So a lot of us coming from, Washington sort of went down the night before, broke up half the drive. We sort of partied in Portland the night before. And like, I remember Ian just being so disgusted that he had to share a hotel bed with somebody. And Ian like legit changed into full on pajamas. Like I go on trips all the time, especially with Musa, Yusuf, and we're so used to just being cheap and throwing 4 or 5 guys sleeping on a bed, sleeping on a floor. Like Ian probably, a little more upscale, changes into full on pajamas and was just so bothered that he had to share a hotel bed that he said like never again. But
I gotta see pajama Ian.
Yeah, this was also in like we got the Mayweather Pacquiao fight, and we thought it was the connection for the Oregon coast was just bad, but it was so brutal because it was like such a big fight for Los, and the reception was so bad, and it's just like we thought it was just our internet connection, but it was bad for everybody. And this was also like Kenny in the height of the Kaepernick stuff, right? Like drunk out of his mind because the fight's after the draft and we've all been drinking. And like during the national anthem, he like stops everything, stands up and salute, like puts his arm on his chest for like while everybody else. And so it's like kudos to him for actually, putting his money where his mouth is as far as like respecting the anthem. I mean, he was on the, on the minority side of that debate. And it's like, okay, well, he's all about it. I mean, he's willing to stand and salute at attention. So Wade, I think, I was so stoned out of my mind the night before. I think we stayed and watched Wade play like his Madden career mode for like 3 or 4 hours.
High as a kite.
You were distracted the next day. I mean, I think you paid more attention to like Amanda's draft than your own. You had to leave, another one that you had to leave early kind of thing. But
I flew to Chicago for a business thing the next month.
Randy was like doing laundry till like 4 a.m, which I don't know what that was about. Unless you went out in the sand. Like it was just awesome house though. I mean, awesome house. It was like, we had a little bit people coming in at different times and that stuff. I think that didn't play well either. It was like, we did that whole, like 3-mile hike, which again, SKFL isn't the most shape. So we walked for about 2 miles to go to this restaurant that Wade wanted us to go. And it's like, they couldn't seat us because it was like 12 people coming randomly. And so we all kind of like had to walk back. I think somebody used joke. It was like, it's probably like the second best joke I've ever heard, but it was like me, Los, Musa trying to walk up this hill, and somebody said like, this looks like a Biggest Loser competition where it's like we're all walking uphill, and it was just, that was just another one of those like, this is what the draft, this is what the league should be about. Like, you know, you got people that are, whether they're with their families or away from their families, we're spending a weekend together. So really good memories about that draft. Third best draft of all time, I have 2010. We went to Las Vegas. This was thrown together last minute. I mean, kudos to Randy. He paid for this whole, the suite was unreal. Like, this draft was supposed to be done at Les's, like the South Prairie Firehouse, and Les just sort of like dropped the ball. And so like a week before the draft, or like 2 weeks before the draft, Randy's like, I'm just going to book a suite in Las Vegas. And the suite was amazing. I mean, it fit all of us. I think Gist might have stayed in a different room because he brought his family. Wade brought his wife. My dad came. We shared a same floor. This was we shared the same floor with like Mike Huckabee, which, I mean, that just sort of like shows I think Ian slept outside. We had a suite in Vegas that had a patio. There was a jacuzzi. I mean, it was unreal. It also had kind of like some funny anecdotal things where Casey took Jermichael Finley in the third round, and like it ruined Gist's draft for like 3 rounds. He couldn't recover. He was so like sure he was going to be able to get Jermichael Finley in the 5th or 6th. This was also I like my best line at the draft ever, I think, was Casey drafted Alex Smith, and we were in the height of the draft. We were taking pictures and like putting the players up, so we were decorating the suite. And you know, there wasn't an Alex Smith picture, so I said, well, I'll go into the bathroom, wipe my ass, and we'll just use that for like Alex Smith, and something about like you can't spell Smith without shit or whatever. And it was just like one of those that carried on. This hurt. You weren't there, like you weren't able to make that draft. I mean, you go to Vegas and you have that suite. It should be the best draft of all time. The reason it's not, I think what led to getting rid of some of those guys in the league.
We've lost Jeffrey. I think you got a call. We'll see if Jeffrey comes back. In the meantime, Rob Burrow here with the Rockford Report. Hope you're all doing well. We've got some good stuff coming up here in the next few days. He's back.
Yeah, I think yeah. Did I lose you?
You're back.
Okay, yeah. I think it just sort of us realized like, you know, we got to get more friends in the league. This should be a communal, like family. These are the guys that you want to go, you know, spend the rest of your life with kind of thing in a league. And I think there's a big hankering now because we like the people in our league to kind of do this again. I could see maybe you don't go for the draft. We've explored potentially like future get-togethers being like week 1, doing a quick remote draft or whatever, and then you know, getting together for a week 1. I think we got to redo this one, but Vegas was awesome. Great draft again. Randy saved the day with the suite. I mean, it was 2 floors, multiple rooms, 2 or 3 people stayed outside. There was a jacuzzi. I think I got in the jacuzzi naked. Like it was unbelievable.
I'm sure Wade's wife enjoyed that.
Yeah, right. Second best draft of all time, I give it to you. You know, I have the 2008 draft. You hosted this at your house. I think awesome. On Wade's pod, he talked about like the joke with Gist, and I think Gist had one of his little like freestyle raps to kick off that draft too. And most of this happened like post draft. This was when was it the I can't remember which was 2008 the Athens Olympics, or
I don't remember.
I can't remember which.
Yeah,
So
I know it was
2000
like 3 in the
was
morning, whatever the
Sydney.
hell it was.
2000 was Sydney. 04 was I can't remember, but the USA basketball team was playing Spain, and it was either the gold medal game, and I think the game kicked off like live at 11:30 p.m. So we all stuck around till like 2 in the morning watching that game, and it was this amazing. You know, that was like the Redeem Team game. It was just like this amazing game. Not anything like really special about the draft, but it was again just all of us in the same room. We had some stuff going on outside in your backyard, but just sort of like a perfect draft. And again, maybe I have it overvalued because it followed Doug's draft, which was the worst of all time. So you're like, okay, this
That
is
was
how
also
it
the Vaughn beef draft.
That's right. That's right. Vaughn shows up with about 30 pounds of random beef jerky and like parting gifts of like raw beef to give to people. So great draft. I remember that was again another election year. I think I was we had like the Barack the Casbah shirt and a couple other. That was when people were really starting to wear jerseys. I think there was a Gist had a TJ Hushmanzada jersey. Casey, I think, had a Lawrence Maroney jersey. So again, that was right where we were starting to feel like this SKFL thing could be really big. And then the best draft of all time, I have another one. I mean, kudos to you for hosting. I have you as the top number 1 and number 2 drafted hosts of all time, or the drafts of all time. I have the 2014 draft. You hosted, I think this was at PJ's Cabana at our apartments in Bellevue.
Yep.
This draft it had everything. I think we were all there. Harris showed up with like 3 growlers of beer that I think he finished by like round 5. So he was completely obliterated. There was, I think Yusuf was the only guy who wasn't there. He had a remote drafter. This was the draft. AJ took Odell in the 13th and sort of it's created his legacy. It's what he's known for. But there was a pool, there was a jacuzzi. And I think it just shows to me the perfect draft is you get everybody in a nice room where they're have some space to get away from each other if they want to. Like we could be as loud as we wanted. There was alcohol, there was food. Musa got super sick. Like he's allergic to carrots and he ate something with a carrot. So he started like dry heaving and then the dry heaving led him to like throwing up. But now I remember like there was some of those because that was in the middle of keepers. So sometimes if you were keeping guys like 6, 7, 8, you would just sort of check out from the draft. So I think me and like Musa and Ian went into the hot tub in the middle of the draft. It was just an amazing draft to me. So that to me is the best draft we've ever had. There's been some close contenders, but definitely all you want is like we've known each other now 20, 25 years. You just want to get everybody in a Big Brother style room, Big Brother style house. Shenanigans are going to happen. Like a draft's made from good food, good drink, everybody in the same room, some boneheaded picks, some of that stuff. And to me, this is the one that had it all.
Yeah, it was a really good room. We were fortunate to get it. Didn't cost anything, which is always a bonus. And anytime you got a pool and you get some fat guys to jump in a pool, that's a win too.
Exactly.
All right, Jeffrey. Well, this was fun. This is a good one. I think a lot of people will be interested to hear, kind of talk about nostalgia about these drafts. And
yeah, they'll have their own. They'll have their own critiques, and it'll hopefully make them kind of think back on some of those things that they liked and remember some of those picks that sort of set your legacy for sure.
All right, man. Well, have a good week. Good luck next week, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Go Dodgers.